Rosie Franklin, page 384, marker.
Gregor Mendel, father of genetics. Watson and Crick, founders of DNA. Watson, Crick, and Wilkins, the Nobel Prize recipients for their work on DNA. Rosalind Franklin. Sorry, who? Let's find out! Hello people, and welcome back to Genetic Geeks and to this video on Rosalind Franklin in the series What You Thought You Knew About Genetics But Didn't. Today we are introducing you to a woman who had an immense impact on the history of genetics, yet very few people know who she is because arguably she never got the credit she deserved. To set the scene, this all went down in the early 1950s, the same time Watson and Crick were doing their thing with research and the race to find the structure of DNA. Rosalind Franklin was doing the same, but with Maurice Wilkins. Franklin and Wilkins were peers and equals in their research on DNA, but their relationship was a bit tense, to put it gently. One could say that Wilkins was the bane of Franklin's existence. Why was this the case, you ask? Welp, when Franklin started working as a research assistant in John Randall's lab, her research partner, Maurice Wilkins, was away on vacation. When he came back, he mistakenly thought that Franklin was one of his technical assistants, instead of his equal working alongside him. Now, this was not a completely uncalled for assumption on Wilkins' part, for in the 50s, women were not accepted in most university settings and thought of as inferior in their intellectual capabilities. So basically, Wilkins acknowledged his mistake, but Franklin and Wilkins were never able to move past it, and thus a grudge was born. This grudge between Wilkins and Franklin actually held quite an implication. Franklin and Wilkins were beat to the publication of The Structure of DNA by Watson and Crick, partly due to the conflict between Franklin and Wilkins in their professional relationship. In Franklin's research, she took beautiful crystallographic photographs of DNA using X-ray diffraction techniques. The DNA molecule she was working to photograph came in two shapes, the crystallized form of DNA and the dissolved form of DNA. It was the dissolved form, her photograph 51, that went on to become famous within the genetic world. The photo 51 looked like a giant blurry diamond. The top and the bottom of the diamond were darker. From the center of the diamond, an arrangement of horizontal smear-like lines stretched across the diamond, forming a big X. It has been described before in Horace F. Judson's book, The Eighth Day of Creation, that the pattern shouted helix. Here's the rub though. Apparently, the photo did not shout helix back to Rosalind. Instead, she focused her time and efforts on the photo of the crystallized DNA instead of the dissolved. Going back to the rocky relationship that Franklin had with Wilkins, one day, Wilkins decided to haphazardly show the photograph 51 to Watson. It's hard to say whether Wilkins did it carelessly or out of spite to Franklin. Either way, the photo shouted helix to Watson, and Watson and Crick were able to publish their findings almost immediately. It's hard to say if it would have been Watson and Crick or Franklin and Wilkins who discovered the structure of DNA first if Wilkins had not shown that photo to Watson. Both were close, but Watson and Crick won. This story doesn't have a very happy ending. In 1956, Rosalind got sick with cancer from all the work she did with radiation when working with X-ray diffraction. She passed away in 1958. 1962 is the year that Watson, Crick, and Wilkins received the Nobel Prize for their work in genetics. So now you know. It's hard to say whether Rosalind Franklin would have been given the credit she deserved if she had lived longer, but nonetheless, her research of genetics was pivotal to the discovery of the secret of life.